He left me for a younger woman. Then 3 years later, she walked into my office, asking me for a job. And I hired her, yes, you heard that right. The same woman my husband tore our marriage apart for. Now sits 2 desks away from me, pretending not to notice the way my eyes never quite look at her. I'm glad you're here today, because this story is not just about revenge. It's about losing everything you thought you were and building yourself back from the dust. Stay with me till the end. You'll understand why I don't hate her anymore. Did you like my story? Please like and subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I want to know how far this story of mine travels. When I think back to how it all began, I remember a kitchen filled with Sunday morning light. Coffee brewing, my husband Evan reading the news on his tablet, me humming to a song I don't remember anymore. We'd been married 12 years. Comfortable, steady. I used to say we were one of those quiet success stories you don't see in movies because nothing explosive happens. Our arguments were small, our laughter easy. He'd kiss my forehead before leaving for work, muttering, "See you tonight, boss lady." Because I was one of the few women in our city running a design firm on my own. It was tough, but I was proud of it. We both were. We'd built a life that looked solid from the outside. No one saw the tiny cracks forming under the surface. And neither did I. I thought we were safe. The day he left is still burned into my mind like a flash photo I never asked for. He came home early, face pale, hands trembling. He didn't sit down. He just said it. "I can't do this anymore." When I asked, "Do what?" He didn't answer right away. He looked out the window like the view would rescue him from the truth he was about to say. Then he whispered a name I didn't recognize. Lena, that was 3 years ago. And now, every morning, I walk past her in the hallway of my own company. She keeps her head down, polite, professional. We pretend nothing ever happened. 2 women sharing the same air, thick with memories neither of us mentions. You might think I hired her for revenge. But that's not how it started. Not exactly. When her resume landed on my desk, I almost laughed. Same field, same city, same name that once split my world in half. Part of me wanted to shred the paper. Another part wanted to see her face, to look at the person who was worth destroying a marriage for. I told myself I was over it, that I'd moved on. But when she walked into my office for the interview, I felt my heart drop into my stomach. She was younger, yes, but not in the way I'd imagined. Nervous, trying too hard to look confident, holding a portfolio to her chest like a shield. Her voice shook when she said, "Thank you for seeing me." And in that moment, something inside me shifted, maybe because I saw not the enemy who broke my home, but a girl who was probably lied to just like I was. Still, I hired her. Call it curiosity, call it control, call it whatever you want. But that decision changed everything, because working with the woman who took your husband is like living next to a house fire you pretend is under control. The smoke gets in your lungs whether you admit it or not. People say time heals. They never tell you it also rewinds when you see the person who hurt you every day. Sometimes, late at night, I catch myself replaying the past. The way he smiled when he said her name. The way I pretended not to notice his phone turned face down on the table. I wonder when the first lie started. I wonder if I was in the room when he decided to stop loving me. And yet, I wake up each morning, put on my best suit, and lead meetings where she sits quietly taking notes. We never speak of it. We never acknowledge the ghost between us. But you and I both know ghosts don't stay quiet forever. Back then, before everything broke, I used to believe that love was a contract you could trust. A simple agreement between 2 people who meant what they said. Turns out, some contracts expire without notice. It's funny. I remember the exact moment the warning sign first appeared, long before the affair. It was so small I almost ignored it. A late night at the office. Evan texted, saying he'd grab dinner with a colleague. He came home smelling of wine I didn't buy and a perfume that wasn't mine. When I asked, he laughed and kissed my cheek, saying, "You're getting paranoid." I laughed too. Because that's what you do when you're afraid of being right. That was the beginning. A tiny lie wrapped in charm. too harmless to fight over. If only I knew that was the first crack in everything. And now, here we are 3 years later, me on one side of the office table, her on the other, and the ghost of the man we both lost hovering somewhere in between. Before everything unraveled, my life was ordinary in the best way. You know that kind of comfort that sneaks up on you, where you stop counting blessings because you assume they'll always be there. That was us, me and Evan. 12 years of marriage built on routines so steady they felt permanent. Every morning had a rhythm. He'd make the coffee, I'd pack our lunches. We'd trade sleepy jokes about traffic or bills, small talk that glued us together without us even realizing it. On weekends, we'd drive to the farmer's market, argue playfully about who got the better tomatoes, then spend afternoons watching bad TV with our legs tangled on the couch. It wasn't passionate or glamorous, but it was safe. Safe can feel like love, until it isn't. I remember our apartment. Open windows, plants everywhere, the faint smell of his cologne on the hallway rug. I used to think scent was proof someone existed in your life. Now I know it can also be proof they're gone. But back then, everything felt stable, like a song on repeat that you never wanted to end. We weren't rich, but we were proud. My design firm was finally gaining traction. Small businesses trusted me to shape their brands. Evan, meanwhile, was climbing the ladder at a logistics company. We had a rhythm of mutual respect. He'd listen to me vent about clients who wanted miracles on tiny budgets, and I'd listen to his endless stories about warehouse chaos and late shipments. We were partners, or at least I thought we were. The funny thing is, happiness never announces when it's about to expire. If it did, I would have held it tighter. There was this one evening, I still see it like a snapshot, when we were cooking dinner together. Music playing low, wine glasses half full. He was chopping onions, telling me about a new intern at his office who reminded him of his younger self. I smiled, teased him for sounding like an old man. He laughed, that deep laugh that used to warm the room. He said, "She's smart. Fresh out of school. You'd like her. She's ambitious like you." I didn't think twice about it. That was how small it started. A name mentioned casually over dinner, like background noise. I didn't even remember it until much later. Her name was Lena. If life were fair, little things like that would come with warning labels. But it didn't. So I just laughed, poured him another glass, and told him I was proud of him for mentoring someone. That's who I was back then, trusting, maybe too trusting. My friends used to say we were the grown-up couple. No drama, no public fights, just two adults who'd figured it out. We hosted dinners, gave advice, pretended we had wisdom worth sharing. If anyone looked close enough, they might have seen how tired I was, how I carried the weight of keeping things smooth. But I didn't mind. I told myself that's what love is, maintenance. We talked about having kids once or twice. He'd shrug and say, maybe later, when things settle down. They never did settle down, not in the way I expected. Instead of building a family, we built excuses. He got busier. I got lonelier. And we both called it normal. Sometimes I think about that version of me, the one who thought love was about being patient. She was soft, naive maybe, but kind. She didn't know she was living inside a countdown. Work became my anchor. My company, Harper & Kerber Design, started as a passion project from our spare bedroom. Now it had a small office downtown, a handful of employees and clients who trusted me. I remember staying late one night, rearranging furniture before a new client meeting. Evan called and said, "Don't stay too late, boss lady." That nickname, boss lady, always made me smile. It felt like affection, like pride. Now when I hear it in my memory, it sounds like distance. Like he was reminding me where my energy really belonged. At work, not with him. He used to joke that I loved my job more than I loved him. I'd laugh it off, saying, "At least my job doesn't leave socks on the floor." We thought it was harmless teasing. But maybe that was the first truth hiding in a joke. He wasn't wrong. I did pour myself into my work. But not because I loved him less. Because I thought success would make us both proud, that he'd look at me and think, "That's my wife. We're a team." Instead, my success built space. And someone else walked into that space while I wasn't watching. I remember the first night he came home late without texting. It wasn't unusual. He worked long hours. But that night, something in me noticed the silence. He apologized, said there was a company dinner he forgot to mention. I believed him, of course I did. You believe the people you build your life around. You don't check receipts or track phone locations. You just trust. That's what love looked like to me. Belief without evidence. The irony is, that kind of faith is what makes betrayal possible. The next morning, I found his tie draped over the couch, smelling faintly of perfume. Not the expensive kind, not the one I wore. Something floral, youthful, too sweet. It was the kind of scent a woman wears when she still believes love is supposed to be dramatic. I told myself I was imagining things. He kissed me goodbye, said he'd make it up to me with dinner on Friday. And just like that, the thought disappeared. Or maybe I buried it. Looking back, I realized that was the moment the clock started ticking. For months, nothing seemed wrong. We laughed, traveled, even went to a friend's wedding and danced until our feet hurt. He held me close during the slow song, whispered, "Still my favorite dance partner." I believed him. Because sometimes love lies kindly. It doesn't sound cruel, it sounds comforting. But underneath, something was shifting. He started spending more nights at the office. I started sleeping with my phone on silent, afraid of the empty notifications that would remind me he hadn't texted. I told myself we were just in a busy season. Everyone goes through phases, right? I was so busy fixing everyone else's brand identities that I didn't notice mine was falling apart. There was this evening in early spring. I remember because the light outside was gold, soft, forgiving. He came home late again. I was sitting on the balcony with 2 glasses of wine. He looked surprised to see me waiting. I smiled, asked, "Rough day?" He said, "Yeah, meetings ran long." He hugged me, quick and distracted, then went straight to the shower. When I reached for his jacket to hang it, his phone buzzed. A message preview flashed. Just one word, "Missed you." No name, just that. I froze. He came out moments later, hair wet, humming. I handed him his phone. He smiled, thanked me, and never noticed my hands shaking. That was the first real warning sign. I didn't confront him. Not that night. Not for many nights after. Because the truth isn't something you search for when you're afraid to find it. If I could go back, I'd tell that woman on the balcony to pay attention. To stop explaining away the unease. To realize that silence between 2 people can be louder than any fight. But of course, I didn't. I smiled, went back inside, and told myself love just needed time. I had no idea that love was already packing its bags. It's strange how your body knows something's wrong long before your mind catches up. For me, it started with silence, not the comforting kind, but the kind that hums just below the surface like a warning. You don't see it at first. You just feel it. Like the air in your home changes temperature, but the thermostat stays the same. Evan started leaving earlier in the mornings. "Got a new project," he said, voice light, eyes on his phone. He'd kiss my cheek, grab his briefcase, and leave before I'd even had my first sip of coffee. It was fine. I told myself this was what ambition looked like. We were both busy, both chasing dreams, except his dreams didn't seem to include me anymore. One morning, I packed him a sandwich, tucked a note inside that said, "Love you, proud of you." He smiled distractedly and forgot the lunch on the counter. That was the first time I felt invisible in my own kitchen. At the office, I was thriving. My small team had grown to 8 people, and we'd just landed our biggest client yet, a luxury spa rebranding project. I should have been overjoyed. Instead, I found myself staring at my phone between meetings, checking for texts that didn't come. He'd reply hours later, short messages that felt mechanical. "Busy day, call you later." Sometimes he didn't call at all. Still, I didn't panic. You don't want to seem paranoid, right? You tell yourself people grow apart sometimes. You tell yourself it's stress or routine or hormones or you're just tired. But the truth doesn't disappear just because you're polite to it. One night, I found one of his dress shirts in the laundry basket, wrinkled and smelling faintly of someone else's perfume, the same floral sweetness from before. My chest tightened, but I said nothing. I put the shirt in the wash and told myself maybe someone hugged him at work. You invent these tiny stories because the truth is unbearable. He came home late again that night. I was half asleep when I heard the door creak. He whispered, "Didn't mean to wake you," and kissed my forehead. His lips were cold, and I remember thinking, who were you kissing before me? I hate that thought, because once you think it, it never leaves. Around that time, he started guarding his phone like it was gold. Before, he'd leave it lying around, unlocked, forgotten on the counter. Now it was glued to him. He even took it into the bathroom. I told myself I trusted him. But late at night, when he turned his back to sleep, I'd stare at the glowing rectangle on his nightstand, wondering what secrets it held. Once, I tried to ask casually, "Who are you texting so much lately?" He didn't look up. He just said, "Work stuff, nothing exciting." His tone was normal, but his eyes weren't. They flickered for half a second, just enough for me to notice. That was the moment my stomach dropped. Because I realized it wasn't that he'd changed overnight. It was that I'd stopped paying attention months ago. We went to dinner one Friday, a restaurant we used to love. The waitress asked if we were celebrating something. Evan laughed, said, "Just keeping the spark alive." I smiled, but the spark he was keeping alive wasn't with me. He spent most of the meal scrolling through his phone, muttering about work. When I asked him to put it away, he apologized, but not sincerely. His attention was somewhere else entirely. On the drive home, I looked out the window and felt this ache I couldn't name. He reached for my hand like a reflex, but it was limp. No warmth, no spark, and still, I squeezed back, because letting go would make it real. The next week, I found a hotel key card in his jacket pocket. White plastic, no logo, no name, just a number embossed on the side. When I asked about it, he didn't flinch. "Oh, that," he said easily. "Client meeting downtown. They booked a suite for a presentation." He handed me the card like proof of nothing. I nodded, pretending to believe him. But my heart was pounding so loud I thought he'd hear it. That night, I dreamed I was drowning, trying to speak underwater while someone watched from the shore. When I woke up, I was crying. I wish I could say that was the moment I confronted him. But no. I went to work, smiled through meetings, and told myself love just looked different after a decade. That people grow quieter, more distant. That it was normal. Denial is such a comforting drug. Then came the business trip. He said he was flying to Chicago for 3 days. I helped him pack, his favorite tie, his cologne, a book he never finished. He kissed me goodbye, said he'd call when he landed. He didn't. That night I refreshed my messages every 10 minutes. Nothing. No landed safe, no miss you. Just silence. By the second day my mind was spinning. I even checked the airline website, pretending I was just curious about flight delays. On the third night I texted, "Hope the meetings went well. Call me when you can." He replied 2 hours later, "Sorry, crazy day. Back tomorrow?" "No, I love you. Just efficiency." He came home the next evening with a tan he couldn't have gotten in Chicago in March. When I asked, he laughed it off. Just bright office lighting. I wanted to believe him. But when he hugged me, I smelled the same perfume again. And I knew, deep down, something had shifted beyond repair. Still, I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I folded his laundry, made dinner, washed dishes. I went to work the next day, smiled at clients, and pretended I didn't feel my marriage dissolving inside me. Because facing the truth means admitting you've lost control. And I wasn't ready for that yet. One evening, I came home early and saw him on the balcony, phone pressed to his ear. His voice was soft. Not business soft, but intimate soft. He said, "I'll call you later." She just got home. My stomach turned to ice. I opened the door quietly. He looked startled but recovered instantly, smiling. "Hey, didn't hear you come in." I asked. Who was that? He hesitated, just a blink, and then said, Client issue. You wouldn't want the details. And that was the first time I saw fear in his eyes. He wasn't afraid of losing me. He was afraid of getting caught. That night, I lay awake beside him, staring at the ceiling. Every exhale of his felt like a lie. I turned away, pretending to sleep, but tears slipped quietly into the pillow. You know that kind of crying, the kind where you don't even move your face because you don't want the other person to know you're breaking. It was that night I decided to find out the truth. Not because I was strong, but because pretending had become unbearable. When you live in denial long enough, even heartbreak starts to sound like freedom. There's a moment when your world splits in two, before and after. Before you believe. After you just survive. For me, that line was crossed on a cold Wednesday evening. The kind of day when everything feels ordinary. The sky gray, the office quiet, my coffee too bitter. If someone had told me that morning, today you'll lose everything you thought you knew, I would have laughed. But by nightfall, I wasn't laughing anymore. It started small, like most disasters do. He'd left his laptop open on the kitchen table. Evan never did that. He guarded his devices like a secret diary. He was in the shower, humming, carefree. I don't know what made me look. Curiosity? Fear? Instinct? Maybe all three. The screen was still lit. An email tab. Subject line, miss you already. No name, just a thread of words I wish I'd never read. I clicked. And there it was. Messages between him and someone named Lena. You looked incredible today. Can't stop thinking about last night. Wish she didn't suspect anything. That line hit like a blade. She. That was me. My heart stopped. For a second, everything went silent, like the air had been sucked out of the room. Then the noise came rushing back, water running, his voice humming off-key, the world spinning like a carousel I couldn't get off. I closed the laptop, hands trembling, and walked to the window. Outside, the city looked so normal. People crossing streets, headlights blinking, life continuing as if my world hadn't just shattered. It's funny how tragedy is always quiet. When he came out of the shower, I was sitting at the table. He smiled, towel around his shoulders. What's wrong? He asked. My throat was dry. I said, Who's Lena? His face changed instantly. Not guilt, not fear. Something colder, calculation. He hesitated just long enough to confirm everything. Then he said, She's a coworker. Why? I looked at him, really looked. The man I'd shared a life with, kissed goodnight, laughed with, now standing there, lying without flinching. I said quietly, I read the emails. He froze. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then he sighed like a man admitting defeat, not remorse. I didn't mean for you to find out like this. That's all he said. Not, I'm sorry. Not, it's over. Just that. The hours that followed are a blur. Voices raised, tears, broken sentences. I remember pacing the kitchen, demanding answers that didn't exist. How long? Why her? Was it worth it? He said words like confused and lonely, like betrayal was some kind of accident that happened while he wasn't paying attention. At one point, he shouted, You were always too busy with work. I laughed, an ugly, hollow sound. Because I had been busy, building a future for both of us. While he was busy building lies, he packed a small bag that night. Said he needed space. Space. As if I hadn't already given him all the space in the world. When the door closed behind him, the silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, suffocating, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. I sat on the floor, knees pulled to my chest, staring at the door. The only thing I could think was, it's real now. The thing you hope will never happen. It's happening. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of coffee. My own hand had made it automatically, as if muscle memory was trying to protect me from heartbreak. I sat at the table with his mug still on the counter, untouched. I didn't cry, not yet. Shock is merciful that way. It numbs you before the pain sets in. I called in sick to work. Told my assistant I had a migraine. Then I opened the laptop again. I read everything. Every word. Every message. He'd been seeing her for almost 6 months. They'd met at his office. She was the intern he'd once told me about. The ambitious one. They went on business trips together, stayed in hotels, laughed about me when I texted asking when he'd be home. That last part broke something deep inside me. Not just because he cheated, but because he mocked my love while doing it. One message stood out. She'd written, "Do you ever feel bad for her?" And he replied, "Sometimes, but she'll be fine. She has her work." Like my career was a consolation prize for the emptiness he left behind. For days, I moved through the world like a ghost. I went to work, smiled when I had to, answered emails. But inside, everything was burning. People told me I looked tired. I'd just smile and say, "Long week." No one knew I was mourning a living person. He called a few times. Voicemail. Then texts. "We need to talk. Please don't tell anyone yet." I didn't want it to end like this. I didn't answer. Not because I was strong, but because I had no words left. I remember one night sitting in the dark, scrolling through old photos. Vacations, anniversaries, birthdays. His arm around me, our smiles so believable. How do you grieve something that wasn't real? That's the worst part of betrayal. Not losing the person, but realizing they never existed the way you thought they did. A week later, he came back. Unannounced. He looked exhausted, eyes red. He said, "We should talk." I didn't invite him in, but he came anyway. He said he'd made a mistake. That Lena was confused, that it was just a connection that got out of hand. He begged me to forgive him. But his words felt empty, rehearsed, like a speech he'd practiced in the mirror. I asked him if he loved her. He looked down, then whispered, "I don't know." That was my breaking point, because there's nothing worse than being betrayed by someone who can't even commit to their betrayal. I told him to leave. He said he'd come back when I'd calmed down. I laughed, because calm was the one thing I'd never be again. When the door shut behind him this time, I didn't sit on the floor. I stood there, still, silent, and finally I cried. Not polite tears, the kind that shake your whole body, that make you gasp for air. The kind that feel like mourning your own death. I cried until there was nothing left. Then I washed my face, looked in the mirror, and didn't recognize the woman staring back. That was the lowest point. The night I realized love can end quietly, not with a crash, but with a closing door. He moved out 2 days later. Took some clothes, a few books, his toothbrush, left his wedding ring on the dresser, like a signature at the bottom of a resignation letter. I didn't hear from him for weeks. Then one day, a friend called and said she saw him at a cafe, with her, laughing, holding hands. Like the wreckage he left behind didn't exist. I thought I'd be angry, but I wasn't. I was numb. Because once you've drowned, watching someone else swim doesn't hurt. It just feels distant. I went home, poured myself a drink, and sat in silence. That's when I made myself a quiet promise. I didn't know what it meant yet, but I said it out loud anyway. One day I'll take back my power. I didn't know how or when or what that would look like, but that sentence became the anchor that kept me from drifting away. After he left, the silence in the apartment felt different. At first it was unbearable, too loud, too heavy. Every sound echoed. The hum of the fridge, the creak of the floorboards, even the ticking clock seemed cruel. But then something strange happened. I started to breathe again. It didn't happen overnight. Grief never leaves that quickly. It lingers, like smoke after a fire, clinging to everything you thought you'd saved. But in that quiet, I found space. Space to think, space to feel, space to finally hear my own voice again. For years, I'd been shrinking myself to make him comfortable, softening my edges, dimming my light so he wouldn't feel overshadowed. Now I didn't have to anymore. The first morning I woke up alone, I expected to cry again. Instead, I made coffee, stood by the window, and realized. I felt relief, not happiness. not yet, but relief. Because the pretending was finally over, I started rebuilding my days, one routine at a time. Work became my therapy, but not in the desperate way it used to be. Before I worked to prove something. Now I worked to reclaim myself. My team noticed the difference. They said I seemed sharper. I smiled, even though inside I was still bleeding. Sometimes power doesn't come from feeling strong. It comes from refusing to collapse. At night, I journaled. I wrote about everything. The betrayal, the anger, the confusion. Some entries were just single sentences. He lied. I survived. I will rise. They weren't goals. They were reminders, because healing isn't a straight line. It's a loop. Some days I woke up fierce, other days I couldn't leave bed, but little by little, the ache turned into focus. About 2 months later, I heard through mutual friends that Evan and Lena had moved in together. I won't lie, it stung. Seeing someone step into your old life, living in the apartment you decorated, using the dishes you picked out. It felt like watching a stranger act out your story. But instead of crying, I wrote one more line in my journal that night. Let them have each other. I'm busy becoming someone neither of them could imagine. And I meant it. I joined a local running club. I signed up for a leadership retreat I'd always put off. I even redecorated the apartment, painted the walls, threw out his old armchair, changed the locks. Every nail in the wall felt like a declaration. This is mine now. But the biggest shift happened at work. I started expanding my firm, taking bigger clients, mentoring younger designers, giving talks about women in leadership. For the first time, I wasn't doing it to prove my worth to anyone. I was doing it because I knew it. My employees noticed the change. They said I seemed calm, like nothing phases you anymore. They didn't know calmness wasn't absence of pain. It was mastery of it. One afternoon, nearly a year later, I was sitting in my office reviewing resumes for a new position. We were growing fast and needed another designer. My assistant Mia came in and dropped a stack of applications on my desk. She said, "There's one candidate with strong skills. Recent work at a logistics company. Nice portfolio." I flipped through the pages absently, sipping coffee, until I saw the name. Lena. The world tilted for a second. Same name, same field. It couldn't be, right? I looked closer. Same city, same last name. And there it was, a portfolio sample from his old company. Her handwriting, her signature, her face in the attached ID photo. For a long moment, I just stared. Then slowly a calm smile spread across my face. Because the universe has a dark sense of humor. I closed the folder, leaned back in my chair, and let the idea sink in. She was applying for my company. The company I'd built from scratch while she was dismantling my life. My first instinct was to toss the resume in the shredder. Then I stopped myself. No, this wasn't about anger anymore. This was about power, and power doesn't shout. It whispers. So I told Mia, "Call her in for an interview." Mia blinked. "You sure? You seem surprised by her name." I smiled faintly. I just like to see who fate brings to my door. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept picturing her face. Not the fantasy version I'd built in my mind, but the real woman I was about to meet. I wondered what she'd expect to find. A bitter ex-wife, maybe? Someone broken, vengeful? She had no idea who I'd become. I stood in front of the mirror, brushing my hair, and whispered, "You're not her victim anymore." It wasn't about revenge. Not really. It was about closure. About finally facing the person who represented everything I'd lost. And proving to myself that I'd survived without needing to destroy her. Still, a small part of me couldn't help imagining the look on her face when she realized who was sitting across from her. The next morning, I went to work early. My office was spotless, papers neatly stacked, sunlight streaming across the glass desk. I wore my favorite navy blazer, the one that made me feel invincible. I sat there quietly, waiting, calm, composed, every heartbeat steady, deliberate, because this time I wasn't the one about to be blindsided. When Mia knocked and said, "Your 10 o'clock is here," I smiled and said, Send her in. And as I heard the soft click of heels approaching down the hallway, I thought, this is it. This is the moment I take back my story, but before she even entered the room, I'd already won. Because the woman who once shattered me no longer had that power. The pain she caused had become the fuel that rebuilt me, and I wasn't the same woman she'd stolen from. When the door opened, I straightened my posture, heart steady. Her face appeared in the doorway, older than I expected, softer, nervous. She clutched her portfolio like a lifeline. For a split second, her eyes met mine. Recognition didn't come immediately, but when it did, her breath hitched, and I smiled. Not cruelly, just calmly, because sometimes the sweetest revenge is to let someone see how beautifully you've healed without them. That day would mark the start of something unexpected. Not war, not chaos, but quiet reckoning. And I didn't know it yet. But what happened in that office over the following weeks would change everything again, not because of what she did, but because of what I chose not to do. Send her in, I said. The door opened. She stepped in. We looked at each other for one long, still second. Lena? I asked. Her fingers tightened on the portfolio. Yes, I gestured to the chair. She sat, back straight. Chin high, hands shaking a little. Let's start, I said. No small talk, no detour. Her resume lay between us like a blade. I flipped the pages. You know who I am. A tiny nod. She swallowed. Yes, good, I said. Then we can be efficient. Silence. The clock ticked. Why do you want this job? She kept her eyes on the portfolio. I like your work. I've followed your campaigns. I want to grow. Why here? Because your standards are high. My mouth twitched. They are. I slid a tablet across. Mock brief, no sugar, tight deadline. 40 minutes, I said. Give me a direction, 2 comps, a headline that doesn't sound like a headline. She nodded. I watched her hands steady. She worked. Stylus moving. Breath easing into a rhythm. I said nothing. I let the room do the talking. At minute 36, she turned the tablet around. 2 crisp concepts. A clean hook line, no fluff. It was good. Walk me through it, I said. She did. Concise. Sure. I listened. I asked 3 hard questions. She kept up. I held her gaze. You can do the work. She exhaled. Thank you. I closed the portfolio. Trial month, I said. You'll report to my creative lead. You'll follow HR. We keep our work clean. We keep our boundaries cleaner. Understood? She nodded quickly. Understood. Her voice cracked on the last syllable. I stood. She stood. I extended my hand. A pause. She took it. Her palm was cold. Mine wasn't. Welcome to Harper & Co., I said. And that was that. The first week was quiet. She arrived early. She left late. No drama. No excuses. The team watched. I watched too. Not her face. Her work, she hit deadlines. Accepted feedback. No flinch. No fuss. Day 8, Mia knocked. We got a request, she said. I looked up. Which one? Crescent Logistics, she said. RFP, big budget. They want a full rebrand pitch in 10 days. The name hung there. His company. Old Ghost. New money, I didn't blink. Book the discovery, I said. Mia hesitated. You sure? Yes. Then, loop Lena into the prep. Mia blinked. Into the pitch? Yes, I said. Into the pitch. The room temperature shifted. Nothing else did. Prep moved fast. No speeches. No history. Just work. We dissected the brief. We cut their jargon to pieces. We built a spine for the brand. Simple, strong, true. I assigned roles. Mia handled logistics. Our strategist owned the narrative arc. I took lead on the board. And Lena, I gave her the key visual. High risk, high trust. She didn't protest. She just nodded. Got it. Night stretched. Screens glowed. Pens scratched. Coffee cooled. I kept my pace even. My voice low, no tremor. No edge. Inside I felt a steady hum. Not rage, power, pitch day. Boardroom glass. A long table. A longer list of eyes. We set up early. Tested cables. Checked fonts. aligned every pixel with a ruler only I could see. Clients filed in, suits, notebooks, handshakes all around. The last man walked in. Evan. No pause. No gasp, no history. He stopped when he saw me. Just half a second. Then that brittle smile I knew too well. "Good morning," I said to the room. To all of them. Not to him, I didn't offer a seat. I didn't avoid his eyes. I didn't acknowledge anything that wasn't business. "Thank you for your time," I began. Slide 1. We moved, strategy, insight, positioning, no filler. No fluff. I kept the rhythm tight. Question, answer, problem, solution. Evan tried twice to interject. Actually, our internal team... I lifted a hand. Polite. Razor edge polite. "We'll come to operations alignment in Section 4, I said. The client VP nodded. "Let them finish," she told him. We did. "Key visual," I said. I turned to Lena. "All yours," she stood. Hands calm, voice steady, she walked them through the concept. A single human image at the center. Movement, scale, precision. Then the tagline. 3 words. No decoration. It landed like a soft punch. The room went quiet. Then a breath. Then a yes, in the VP's eyes before her mouth said it. Questions came fast. Lena answered cleanly. No wobble. No apology. Evan tried again. "I'm not convinced that..." The VP cut him off. "I am," she said. Then to me, "What's your rollout plan?" I was already on the next slide. Phase deployment. Internal buy-in. Training scripts. KPIs tracked by week, then month. No hesitation. No wasted word. When we finished, the VP closed her folder. "This is the strongest pitch we've seen," she said. She looked at Evan. "You didn't tell me your ex-wife ran this firm?" I smiled once. Only with my eyes. "We keep personal and professional separate here," I said. She nodded. "Good," she said. "Because we want you. Pending procurement, you have the business." Mia squeezed her pen until it clicked. Once, twice. I almost laughed. We shook hands. Emails promised to follow. The room cleared. Evan hovered. I gathered the boards. I didn't look up. "Harper," he said softly. I kept stacking. "Don't," I said, one word. "No heat." He tried again. "I didn't know you'd..." "Stop," I said. I turned then. "Only then. We conduct business here," I said. "Anything else is not welcome." He flinched. Just a flicker. He nodded. He left. The elevator doors closed on him. Lena stood by the window, eyes on the city. Her voice was barely above a whisper. I thought I'd faint. I checked my watch. "Debrief in 20, I said. "Bring the working file," she exhaled. "Okay." I left the room. My steps were even. My pulse was not. It was faster, yes, but it didn't shake. It thumped like a drum line at the front of a parade I finally led. Back at the office, we gathered. Mia, strategy, design. Lena at the end of the table. "Strong pitch," I said. "We'll start pre-work tomorrow. Contract will land by Monday." Heads nodded. Notes scribbled. I looked at Lena. "Good work," I said. "Keep it simple." "Keep it clean," she swallowed. "Thank you." "Ground rules," I added. Eyes came up. "We're taking the account. There will be coordination with third-party consultants. No names. No history. HR will set boundaries for communications. All external contact runs through Mia. That includes everyone." A beat. Everyone understood the word everyone. Lena's shoulders eased a fraction. Not relief. Something else. Respect, maybe. Or just contract arrived Monday. We reviewed. One clause bothered me. Primary contact. Evan, I called procurement. "Small change," I said. "Primary contact moves to your VP or marketing director. Will align with operations through scheduled work streams only." They hesitated. I waited. They agreed. I signed. I passed the pen to Mia. She grinned. "Clean," she muttered. "Very," I said. I sent one more email. To Evan's address. Subject: Harper and Coheners Communication Protocol. 5 lines. Neutral tone. Firm edges. All project communication will route via assigned stakeholders. No direct contact outside scheduled sessions. All materials are confidential. Please acknowledge. Thank you. His reply came 5 minutes later. Received. Nothing else. I closed the thread. It stayed closed. He waited for me outside the building that evening. Of course he did. Old habits, old courage. Harper, he said, streetlight on his face. He looked older, smaller. I stopped a safe distance away. Say it quickly, I said. I'm proud of you, he stammered. He tried to smile. It didn't land. I didn't know. You didn't ask, I said. He blinked. I made mistakes, he said. I know, he searched my face. For anger. For softness. For anything. There was nothing for him. Not hate, not love. Just nothing. Go home, I said. He swallowed. Can we? No, one word. Already walking away, I didn't look back. Not once. The door shut behind me with a soft thud that felt like a stamp. Approved. Final. 2 weeks into the project, the first campaign test went live. Numbers climbed. Client happy. Team humming. Lena stayed late, polishing the rollout deck. She knocked on my door. Got a minute? 2, I said. She stepped in. Close the door. Hands folded. Breath steady. I owe you an apology, she said. Her voice didn't tremble. Good. I studied her. Professional distance. Personal history, locked in a drawer. You owe yourself one first, I said. Then do better here. I will, she said. No excuse, no speech. She turned to go, stopped. Thank you for hiring me, I nodded. Not forgiveness. Not friendship. Just a fact. I chose power over pain. Good night, Lena, I said. She left. Quiet footsteps. Door soft, I shut my laptop. City lights blinked outside like calm signals. Everything in its place. Everything mine again. One last email arrived before I stood to leave. Subject. Performance metrics. Week 1. A tidy chart. Up and to the right. I smiled. Small. Enough. I turned off the lights. Locked the door. Walked the hallway alone. No ghosts, no ache. Just my steps, me. The elevator opened. I stepped in. The doors slid together. My reflection held my gaze. I didn't see who he left. I saw who I became. When the storm finally passes, you don't notice it right away. You just wake up one morning and realize the noise is gone. No more checking your phone for messages that never come. No more tightening in your chest when someone says his name. Just stillness. That's what healing feels like. Not fireworks, not victory, but quiet. I didn't celebrate. I didn't throw out old photos or post cryptic quotes online. I just lived. And for the first time in years, living was enough. The project we won with Crescent Logistics became the firm's turning point. Our numbers rose, our name spread, our inbox filled with inquiries. We were the team who'd turned a corporate dinosaur into something sleek and human. It wasn't luck. It was work. It was focus. It was me, finally free of the need to prove anything to anyone. Lena stayed on. I kept her because she did good work, and because firing her would have been too small for what I'd become. Some days we barely spoke. Other days we exchanged quick, efficient notes about deadlines. Professional, distant, civil. There were no more ghosts in those conversations, just tasks and outcomes. One evening, after a long client call, she lingered at the doorway. Do you ever miss him? She asked quietly. I thought about it, then said, No, I miss who I thought he was. That's not the same thing. She nodded. We never spoke about him again. Months passed. The business kept growing. We hired new designers, moved into a bigger office with tall windows and plants everywhere. Sometimes I'd catch my reflection in the glass, not the tired, anxious woman I used to be, but someone grounded, steady. Every scar had settled into place. It didn't hurt to see them anymore. Evan tried to reach out twice after that last street corner encounter. Emails, polite, apologetic, unnecessary. I didn't reply. Closure doesn't always require conversation. Sometimes it's just the absence of reaction. He married someone else eventually, a name I didn't recognize. Good for him. People change, but so did I. And that's the only change that matters to me now. The office culture shifted too. I started insisting on real work-life balance. No more 70-hour weeks pretending exhaustion was passion. Fridays we closed early. Once a month, I took the whole team out for dinner. No laptops allowed. They thought it was generosity. Really, it was gratitude. They'd helped me rebuild without even knowing it. Mia became my right hand. She handled clients, travel, everything. Sometimes she'd laugh and say, "You're softer these days." And she was right. Strength doesn't mean hardness. It means knowing when to unclench. One rainy evening, I stayed late finishing a proposal. The building was almost empty. Lena came by with 2 mugs of tea. "Thought you might need this," she said. We worked side by side in silence. When she left, she paused at the door. "I learned a lot from you," she said. I smiled. "I learned a lot from all of this." And I meant it. When the door closed, I looked around my office. The sketches on the wall, the soft light, the hum of rain outside. It felt like peace. Not perfection. Peace. I started spending weekends doing things I used to postpone. Cooking new recipes. Reading books with no purpose. Traveling alone. The first trip was to Lisbon. I walked the narrow streets, listened to street musicians, drank coffee by the water. No one knew my story there, and that anonymity felt like oxygen. On the flight home, I realized I wasn't running from pain anymore. I was walking toward life. Back home, I repainted the last untouched room in my apartment, the bedroom we'd once shared. Soft gray walls, new sheets, new light. While I worked, I found an old photo stuck behind the dresser, me and Evan on our wedding day. We looked young, hopeful, slightly awkward. For a second, I felt a pinch of nostalgia. Then I smiled and tossed it into the donation box with the rest of the forgotten things. It didn't feel cruel. It felt clean. People sometimes ask me how I forgave him. The truth is, I didn't. I just stopped needing to. Forgiveness implies debt, and I no longer owed him anything. Not anger, not explanation, not space in my head. That realization was freedom. Lena stayed another year. Then one day she came into my office, said she'd gotten an offer elsewhere. Better pay, new challenge. I told her to take it. She hesitated, maybe expecting emotion, but I only said, "Go build something good." She smiled, relieved, and left. No drama, no goodbye hugs, just 2 professionals closing a chapter. When she walked out for the last time, I didn't feel triumph. I felt release. The circle had finally closed. By the time her replacement started, Harper & Co. had doubled in size. Our new slogan, ironically, came from that Crescent campaign, "Build what lasts." It became our mantra, for clients, for ourselves, for me. Every decision since then has been filtered through that question. Does this last? If the answer's no, I let it go. One Friday evening after everyone left, I stood by the window watching the city lights blink below. 3 years since the day he walked out, 1 year since she walked in, and somewhere between those 2 moments, I'd found myself again. I thought about everything that had happened. The heartbreak, the humiliation, the quiet revenge, the rebuilding. It all led here, me standing tall, alone but not lonely. I whispered a thank you into the glass. Not to them, to the version of me who refused to disappear. Sometimes I still get messages from women who've heard parts of my story. Clients, friends of friends, strangers online. They ask how to survive betrayal. I tell them the truth. You don't just survive it. You outgrow it. You learn that heartbreak is not the end of your story. It's the edit that makes it better. That night, as I locked up the office, I caught my reflection in the glass door. Tired eyes, steady smile,